So, as someone who I can't find the stand that this thing goes on, and so it's being propped up by a hope and a prayer, and as such, I'm having to hold on to Mitzi because she keeps knocking it over. Anyway, the so as someone who tries to look with an independent lens at the left and the right, and in each particular case, in each topic of discussion, each area of discourse, discuss, who's right and who's wrong in each situation rather than dogmatically ascribing to the left or the right by default. I find myself amazed by an organization like the Daily Wire, where they can be, on the one hand, espousing extremely sensible ideas that are very worthwhile, and then all of a sudden you get hit in the face with something that is so absurdly authoritarian and just utterly un-American by people who think that they are somehow working to restore American values and that sort of thing, that it really is remarkable. It really does beggar belief. And such a case presented itself just now when I was watching Michael Knowles talk about how he thinks, in his opinion, Satanists don't have the right to display religious iconography on public grounds, so on public property. So this has been a debate that's raged for a long time, the debate about whether or not it's appropriate for religious organizations to display things like the Nativity or the Ten Commandments on courthouse steps or on other public properties and that sort of thing, other public land, on the grounds that it violates the notion of freedom of religion. And so in recent years, there's been an organization called it's not the Church of Satan, the Satanic Temple. Is that it? Temple of Satan, Satanic Temple. Anyway, but one of these organizations has been lobbying to put up their own religious iconography, essentially as a protest of the use of public spaces for the advancement of religious agendas. And they've been putting up their own imagery, so they've been erecting statues of Baphomet in various locations, that sort of thing, winning these court battles that allow them to do that and that sort of thing. So Michael Knowles has recently said that Satanists have no right to do that, and has been saying fundamentally that Satanists enjoy no protections under freedom of religion. In a recent video that just went up, he's tried to articulate his justification for saying that. Now, I know I'm going to get a whole... We tried that. You can't be trusted, remember? Anyway, we're going to get inevitably a bevy of people that are going to say, "But Jordan, why are you defending Satanists? I thought you became a Christian." The discussion here is about religious freedom to all people in the United States of America. That's what we're talking about. We're not trying to make one religion triumph over the other. We're talking about the rights and freedoms that all people enjoy in this country, okay? And this is very important because any other religion other than mine needs to enjoy the same freedoms that I do, so that I can continue to enjoy a guarantee of freedoms of my religious expression. See? Anyway, so here's the thing. Now, the Daily Wire actually hit me with a DMCA claim when I used some of their about a minute worth of their audio in my video of mine a few months ago. And to be very clear, no, that was not just a matched content flag. That was someone from Turnkey, or is it called Turnkey? I forget what it is, but it's the business arm, the managerial arm of the Daily Wire's business interests, actually served YouTube with a DMCA, which I thought was extraordinary, because I used a little bit of audio, a small snippet of audio from Matt Walsh's What is a Woman? And people have been excerpting entire segments from that video for their own reviews and that sort of thing. That said, I really don't want to find out what happens next if I challenge a DMCA from the Daily Wire, so I just let it go. Anyway, for that reason, I'm going to read a quote from Michael Knowles rather than just quote the audio directly, or use the audio or the video directly. Now, the thing about Michael Knowles, the thing that's bizarre to me, is that he really does seem to think, as I've watched his stuff, he really does seem to think that he can just enact laws that will ban anything he doesn't like. He seems to have no regard whatsoever, no concept, no regard whatsoever for anybody's freedom of any kind. And it's extraordinary to me. He has no, I mean, he literally seems to be of the belief, that if he does not agree with something, then there's automatically, that automatically creates somehow the basis for banning it, striking it down in a legal context and enacting laws against it. And it's the most bizarre thing. Like, I saw him do a commentary on Dylan Mulvaney, and this is amazing. This is how bad this guy is. I'm about to defend the civil liberties of Dylan Mulvaney. And to be very clear, once again, no, I don't like Dylan Mulvaney. I think Dylan Mulvaney is a heinous insult to basic human decency. I think Dylan Mulvaney is revolting on a level that beggars human comprehension. I don't even think of Dylan Mulvaney as a transsexual. I think of Dylan Mulvaney as a heinous combination of Al Jolson and Barney the Purple Dinosaur. Anyway, I don't like Dylan Mulvaney, but that's not the point. Michael Knowles, I watched a video where Michael Knowles talked about Dylan Mulvaney, and he said that the way that Dylan should be dealt with is to say, and it's weird when he talks, he sounds like an authoritarian version of Jerry Seinfeld in the tone of his voice. It's weird, like a very serious authoritarian Jerry Seinfeld. But he goes, he's talking about Dylan Mulvaney. He says, what we need to do is tell people like this, no, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to dress that way. If you dress that way, we're going to put you in jail. And it's like, wait a minute. Okay. I can understand having a common sense discussion about why it's not acceptable for children, underage children, to put money into the G-strings of male drag queens, into the G-strings of clown strippers. And yes, that does occur. Yes, there is extensive video footage of it. It occurs over and over again. It is not some random paranoia from the right. It really is happening. Fucking deal with it. And don't inundate me with a bunch of screeching comments to the contrary, because your brains all turn to dildos for some reason, because I don't think it's acceptable for children to put money in the G-strings of clown strippers. Anyway, so that said, yes, there's a common sense discussion that we can have about that, why that's not acceptable. But as far as Dylan Mulvaney just wearing whatever clothes Dylan Mulvaney so desires, no. Let me put this in words Michael Knowles can understand. No, that's not how it works. There's no law saying you have to dress a certain way. And while I think Dylan Mulvaney is a jackass, I want Dylan Mulvaney to be able to dress however Dylan Mulvaney wants, because the respect for his rights, their rights, impacts the respect for my rights and everybody else's rights. We all live by the same laws. And that's the thing. Michael Knowles really does seem to think that if he doesn't like something, he can just pass a law to ban it. And never was that more profoundly the case than this thing that he's been trying to do about whether or not Satanists enjoy religious protections, because this is a direct quote from his video. It's called "The Illinois State Capitol Satanism Display is Not Protected by the," and I'm going to assume the rest of it is the First Amendment or something like that. But you can look it up under Michael Knowles easily enough from that criteria. But this is his quote. Okay, so he tries to make the argument in the video that Satanists, Satanism does not fit the definition of a religion for this reason. Quote, "The very notion of religious freedom precludes protections for Satanists. The reason is that religion is not just anything you believe about anything. I know colloquially that's how we refer to religion. That's not what religion is. Religion has a real definition, okay? Religion is the moral virtue by which a person is disposed to render to God the service and worship that God deserves. That's what a religion is. Religion is a kind of a justice through which and by which we give God what God deserves. So it's not just any belief you have about anything." Well, Michael, you could not be more wrong. That as far as how the United States and U.S. law is concerned, as far as the laws governing this country, the 1944 case of the United States v. Ballard established that belief, sincerely held, commonly held belief among a group of people is what establishes something as a religion, irrespective of whether or not it refers to a specific God. And that's based on the criteria established in U.S. v. Ballard, which concerned a religious movement, a New Age religious movement called the I Am movement, who believed that certain of their members had magical powers that enabled them to heal terminal illnesses and perform other supernatural feats. Initially, it was argued that this could not constitute a religion because the persons in question did not actually have those powers. It was, however, established in the United States v. Ballard that it was the sincerely held belief of the members which established their right to be understood from a legal standpoint as a religion. There are a great many religions that do not function around any kind of specific deity. Buddhism being a great example. Buddhism is unquestionably a sincere religion which does not bow to any one particular deity. And the problem here is that Michael Knowles' concept of freedom of religion extends exactly as far as the religion that he wants to practice, with no regard for what anybody else believes. So, and what's amazing here, though, what's really incredible is that he thinks this passes for real analysis or insight into anything. His whole argument here is he is to sit here and make up a completely made-up definition, an arbitrary made-up definition, what he thinks religion ought to mean, and then say that because it doesn't fit his made-up definition, that because this group does not abide by his made-up definition, they therefore can't be a religion. I mean, this is the thought process of a man who really and truly seems to think that anything he doesn't agree with ought to be struck down by law. And I bring that up because it's just authoritarians of any stripe just grate on my nerves horribly. As someone who really is a libertarian and really does have libertarian beliefs about things. But what's funny is this is coming from, it's coming from the Daily Wire, or it's coming from a host on the Daily Wire who apparently agrees with the views discussed in the Daily Wire's most popular documentary right now, that being Matt Walsh's What is a Woman?, in which Matt Walsh explores the idea that the notion of womanhood becomes essentially meaningless when people are able to give it any arbitrary definition they personally desire. He apparently agrees with that point and that line of logic and that point, but he doesn't seem to apply that to anything. He can't seem to apply that objectively across the board to anything he doesn't agree with. If something comes along that he doesn't agree with, he just makes up a definition and decides that because it doesn't fit his made-up definition, it can now be made illegal. And I don't know exactly what conclusive point I ought to draw from this, other than that, I once described myself as a world champion turd identifier. That what I do on YouTube is essentially finding people and ideas and arguments and perspectives and just saying, this is a giant turd. And essentially that's, I guess, what I'm doing here. I try to, and I say that with the acknowledgement that as infuriating as Michael Knowles is, I would still prefer to deal with him as I should deal with all people, as a gentleman, cordially and thoughtfully. But at the same time, I like to get a real, sometimes I like to get a real visceral, emotional response to the people that I'm commenting on. And I really am just dumbfounded by this delusional level of authoritarianism he seems to harbor. Anyway, let's let Mitzi go and see what happens. Not as dramatic as I wanted, but anyway.